So he anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Had Power All Girl, so let's start the series. In the ninja world, deep under a rainforest covered by a thick tree canopy in the center of the continent, a juvenile ninja stumbled farther into the seldom-traveled forest. His clothes were ripped and shredded, and his back and chest were covered in brilliant crimson blood. He looked to be no older than 14 or 15. His feet were uneven, slow as though he were being pulled by an unseen force, and he seemed as though he would pass out at any time. During a period of bad luck, he had managed to momentarily dislodge his assailants. He was Hanamiya Gunma, a member of the Hanamiya clan, a minor ninja clan. He was the nephew of the previous clan leader, who had been killed in battle a month prior. His cousin, the new clan leader, had also died a week ago, therefore he was left to take over as the newest clan leader. After diverting the enemy away and barely avoiding their pursuit during a fight 3 days earlier, Hanamiya Gunma had offered to serve as a decoy to protect the rest of his clan and enable their safe withdrawal. He was now heading toward the prearranged meeting spot. That was his fundamental circumstance, but there's more important information. In addition to everything that has been said, he was a transmigrant. For whatever reason, a year ago, his soul entered the body of a boy named Hanamiya Gunma, erasing the initial consciousness. He first believed he would adopt the system flow cliché when he first arrived in the ninja world, acquiring a cheat-like system to become a world-shaking figure. However, he quickly discovered he had no system at all. He then reasoned that by understanding the historical events and significant turning points in Naruto world, he could follow the genius flow path and become well known. However, his strength had reached a plateau at the level of a chunin thus far, and there was no sign that he would make any further progress. Ultimately, he came to the conclusion that he might be caught in the no longer relevant, trash-to-treasure suffering flow. However, even that was a delusion. He only realized that he had been following the cannon fodder flow all along at this precise moment. Born normal, he was destined to become a glorious footnote, a disposable pawn. His transmigration journey had just begun and already appeared to be coming to an end. Hanamiya Gunma was fairly certain that he was in the time of warring ninja clans, prior to the creation of the hidden villages, even though he was unable to pinpoint the precise period. It was a time of cooking oil over a raging fire, raw, primal, and covered in blood. Almost all minor clans without influence were destined to lose their space to survive. Hanamiya Gunma was plodding along when he abruptly stumbled over something beneath his feet, causing his whole body to fall forward and crash to the ground. Hunger and fatigue made every stride a Herculean one, and he hadn't slept or relaxed for 3 whole days and nights. He had long since ran out of supplies, but he wanted to eat something to get his strength back. As the proverb goes, heaven never seals all paths, yet Hanamiya Gunma struggled to raise his head, pushed his eyes open, and saw something sprouting on the ground not far ahead through a misty haze. Mushrooms. At the very least, mushrooms were superior to tree bark. Without hesitation, he scurried ahead on all fours, slithering until he came to it. Using all of his remaining power, he grabbed what appeared to be a Iringii mushroom, crammed it into his mouth in a few hurried nibbles, and then swallowed it. He didn't realize that the location where this mushroom grew seemed strange until it struck his stomach. Looking back, the mushroom he had just consumed had a strangely rich, greasy texture. The cluster of mushrooms grew from a half-buried stump, and around it grew pale, ghostly pitcher plants, their surfaces covered with glossy aloe-like leaves that shimmered as if painted with oil. Hanamiya Gunma's eyes grew languid as an odd déjà vu feeling overcame him, as though he had discovered something he had seen before. As he examined the stump more thoroughly, he was shocked to see that it had a distorted human face. Ha. Hanamiya Ginma had frequently complained to himself about how unimportant his life was since coming to the ninja world, never running into any well-known people or experiencing any noteworthy occasions. However, his wish had now been fulfilled, as he had finally met a crucial character from the original tale, a white zetsu, a dead white zetsu, no less. He had just eaten that mushroom. It had emerged directly from the eye socket of the white zetsu. Hanamiya Ginma was immediately uneasy because, in theory, he had just eaten the dirtiest, most unhygienic thing in the ninja world. No, it wasn't only unhygienic, this material had negative effects and might perhaps be fatal. His limbs began to convulse uncontrollably, thrashing as though someone were trying to twist him into a pretzel. Even clenching his teeth couldn't stop the guttural groans that were escaping his throat. The unbearable pain started to gradually rob him of his consciousness. If only I'd rinsed it with water first. That was the final idea he had before going totally black. The unconscious Hanamiya Ginma eventually ceased twitching about 10 minutes later. His body curled into a ball, and at one point, a horrifying white color started to spread across his skin, and the forest fell silent once more. He was obviously going through some sort of change. After 3 hours, the pallor gradually subsided and he looked like himself again. Hanamiya Ginma was startled awake by a stifling weight. His eyes opened, and he scrambled to his feet, using his arms to prop himself up while coughing fiercely. A pale, sap-like substance poured out of his mouth with every hacking cough. When the coughing stopped and his breathing calmed down, the sap had collected on the ground in front of him. Hanamiya Ginma exhaled deeply, rested against a nearby tree, and rose slowly. His expression was filled with an inexplicable weight and a clear look of uncertainty. He woke up feeling that his physical condition had improved strangely, that his mind was clear, that all of his wounds had healed, and that his combat ability had advanced to a new level, nearly like Constitution 10, or Chakra 10, even if he was still unsure of what had occurred to him. He had previously been a mere chunin, one of the innumerable dust particles in the ninja world. However, he now believed that he could touch the Kakashi line. Yes, that Kakashi. Stranger, new information had mysteriously sprung into his head, or rather, a new instinct that informed him he had acquired new skills but was difficult to explain. As his intent changed, the whiteness expanded throughout his entire body, turning his left arm completely white with a single thought. It had the texture of peeling tree bark. In a way, he had transformed into a white zetsu. White zetsu, Ginma Hanamiya found it hard to believe. Everyone is aware that a spider bite transforms you into Spider-Man. Using the same reasoning, Hanamiya Ginma's physique changed to resemble a white zetsu's after consuming a mushroom that developed from one. Maybe this might be dubbed White Zetsu Man. In the end, isn't this just a poor man relying on mutation? Hanamiya Ginma assumed that because he had eaten the mushroom carelessly, he had somehow amalgamated with the white zetsu, which had greatly increased his strength and given him part of the white zetsu's innate skills. Although it was worthwhile to research these developments, the moment was not right to do so. He became alert when he heard the sound of fabric rubbing against leaves. Based on the noise, he assumed that 10 or more ninjas were approaching, so he immediately hid. 15 minutes later, the ninjas stopped close by, but it wasn't a coincidence. After he could clearly see their faces, Hanamiya Ginma emerged from hiding. These were his clansmen. As it happened, he had arrived at the meeting spot without realizing it before passing out. Clan leader. The ninjas were momentarily taken aback by his unexpected presence, but as soon as they recognized him, they appeared to relax. Hanamiya Genma inquired, "Are there only a few of you left?" The majority of the 16 ninjas that arrived were young males. It was easy to predict what would happen to the others who did not. "Clan leader," one ninja said with guilt on his face. Raising a hand to halt him, Hanamiya Genma said, "It's not your fault, it seems my decoy plan wasn't as successful as I'd hoped," with a composed expression and a steady voice. A profound sensation of hopelessness caused the ninja to droop his head. "Clan leader, the enemy's forces vastly outnumber ours, we were powerless," he said. The opposition was vastly superior in terms of both numbers and average strength. Once more, Hanamiya Genma inquired, "What about the pursuers? Did you shake them off?" "No, at most, they'll catch up in 4 or 5 hours. They have scouting ninjas, we can't escape." The moment of a ninja clan's life-or-death conflict always came with leisurely certainty, whether or not it was witnessed. Hanamiya Genma inquired, "How many enemies are there?" He could only hope that the number of adversaries still chasing them wasn't ridiculously great because his previous decoy approach hadn't been completely ineffective. In fact, it had managed to draw away some of the enemy forces. The same clansman ninja who had spoken earlier responded, "The enemies still pursuing us are roughly equal in number to our group, about 15 or so." It wasn't completely out of the question to be relentlessly pursued by an enemy force of equal size. On the one hand, the enemy's average strength was greater than theirs, their energy and stamina were almost at their best, and they could get reinforcements much more quickly. On the other hand, Hanamiya Genma shook his head inwardly, looking over his comrades and observing the obvious weakness and exhaustion etched into their bodies. The truth is that they were no longer capable of sustained combat, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They couldn't even continue to run, so forget about fighting. Fortunately, I managed to shake off a portion of the enemy earlier. On the bright side, at least we won't be caught in a pincer attack. A few hours from now, it's likely just these 15 enemies we'll be facing. To maximize our chances of survival, we have no choice but to continue the decoy strategy. A few of us will have to lure the enemy away as much as possible. Hanamiya Genma sighed after giving it some thought and realizing that they had very few options. Despite his youthful appearance, the clan's ninjas had a great deal of faith in him. For one, they had survived this long because of his suggestions, and for another, as the leader of the clan, he had already assumed the risky role of bait for the benefit of the entire clan, basically dying once for them already. His devotion and selflessness were unquestionable. He was competent and set an example. Even if he were guiding them down a route that would lead to their demise, nobody would complain at this stage because he had done everything within his power. After all, who could blame him when their own frailty had taken them to this point of desperation? When the ninja who had just spoken said, "Clan leader, I'm still in decent shape, let me take on the decoy role this time," he volunteered right away. Nearly simultaneously, another ninja walked forward and said, "Count me in, clan leader." Young males in their 20s, Hanamiya Jinkanzawa and Hanamiya Genryunosuk, were the two who volunteered. Without hesitation, Hanamiya Genma said, "Okay, then the 3 of us will handle luring the enemy." He knew these two were 2 of the clan's stronger ninjas and lacked the luxury of politeness. "Clan leader, no need to say more, it's decided." The planned mission, which was formally referred to as a decoy task, was actually a suicide mission. Hanamiya Genma had previously assumed this role once before, therefore there was no reason for him to endanger his life again. Nevertheless, he put an end to his clanmates' protests. There was no time for emotion now. Everyone, listen to my orders. For the next 2 hours, focus on recovering your chakra. 2 hours from now, we'll begin the operation. Don't worry too much, I'm fairly confident in the plan I've devised. Nobody took that last statement seriously, they saw it as meaningless, unfounded assurance. In any event, everyone located a seat and started focusing all of their energy on honing their chakra. Meanwhile, Hanamiya Ginma scaled a big tree and stood on a thick, horizontal branch, looking off into the distance and keeping an eye on the area to warn the others of any danger. It was obvious to the present him that he would lose if he faced 15 adversaries alone, but 1 against 5? That was worth a try. He wouldn't exaggerate his skills because, prior to today, he had been a regular ninja who could only perform 2 or 3 low-level fire release jutsu in addition to the fundamental 3 body techniques. With such limited powers, facing numerous opponents was impossible. However, today things were different. Hanamiya Ginma used his right arm's white zetsu transformation, while he was thinking about his next move in combat. With a simple swing, a miracle event occurred, his arm magically slid through the tree trunk next to him. This was White Zetsu's mayfly technique, not some sort of space-time ninjutsu. Generally speaking, White Zetsu members were weak, but that didn't imply they lacked lethality. The majority of White Zetsu active in the ninja world at this point were intelligence and reconnaissance agents, not combat units, with skills tailored for such jobs. White Zetsu's assassination skills were actually unrivaled, downright perverted, even. Every ninja aspired to have perfect stealth, faultless transformation, and silent movement. According to Hanamiya Ginma, the title, White Zetsu Hero, wasn't only a title. Everyone, please shake my hand one by one. Kanzawa and Ryanosuke, stay until the end. Then listen to me, Hanamiya Ginma remarked as the 2 hours swiftly went by. Despite not understanding Hanamiya Ginma's intentions, the gang obeyed his instruction and moved forward. Based on our previous encounters, compared to the beginning, I've noticed the enemy's approach to combat has grown less disciplined, Hanamiya Ginma said as he shook hands with his clanmates. When pursuing us, remnants with little ability to resist, they seem to treat it like a cat toying with a mouse. Therefore, there's a good likelihood that they will split up their forces to pursue us, hoping to eliminate us one by one, if we keep dividing up to entice them. They have reconnaissance ninjas, and they know we don't, we can turn that to our advantage. Hanamiya Ginma hesitated for a time, but nobody was paying attention to what he was saying. The ninjas who had shaken his hand all had odd looks on their faces. It was soon time for Ryanosuke and Kanzawa. Hanamiya Ginma clasped their hands in his left and right, respectively. As soon as their palms made contact, a stream of copious chakra burst into each man's body. What is this? Hanamiya Ginma was now extracting chakra from the rest of the clan and allocating it equally to the designated decoys, Kanzawa and Ryanosuke, using White Zetsu's spore technique, a jutsu that allowed the user to absorb others' chakra, either for themselves or to transfer it to a third party. However, he was too busy to explain the ability to everyone. Pay close attention. The plan is as follows: Kanzawa, Ryanosuke, and I will divide into 3 groups to divert the pursuing adversaries without hiding. Because of our severe circumstances, it is very possible that the enemy would divide to pursue us, providing us with an opportunity to eliminate them one at a time. Ryanosuke, go to 3 o'clock, Kanzawa, go to 6 o'clock, I'll take 9 o'clock, release your chakra completely, taunt them, but don't engage. Run as far as you can, got it?" Without hesitation, the two said, "Yes, clan leader," nodding in agreement. "Once I deal with the enemies in my direction, I'll come to support you immediately, so don't act recklessly." If Hanamiya Genma acted fast enough and their luck remained, they might just live if they concentrated the chakra of more than a dozen ninjas into 2 individuals. "The rest of you, retreat deeper into the forest and stay hidden until the fighting's over." Following Hanamiya Genma's conclusion, a number of people appeared to want to speak but eventually chose to remain silent. What could they say now? How can the clan leader use his might to defeat 5 opponents who have had time to rest? Nobody was brave enough to say it out loud. Most of them believed that this was a last-ditch effort to survive and that they would do their best, leaving the rest to chance. Hanamiya Genma alone was aware that his decoy plan did not involve sacrificing his life. In order for this plan to succeed, he had extracted almost all of the chakra from his clanmates. Without it, they would be helpless, and if the enemy discovered them, it would undoubtedly be a one-sided massacre. They also couldn't afford to just sacrifice themselves. "All right, have any queries?" A final question from Hanamiya Genma. The group shook their heads, knowing they were mentally ready for any eventuality. "Good, then. Let's begin." Deeper in the thick woodland, once the clan members had been hidden and were so weak that they could not fight at all, the 3 decoys advanced quickly in a prearranged path without having to hide. As the enemy's pursuit approached, Genma Hanamiya planned to divide them up and eliminate each one individually, while the other 2 believed their sacrifice would provide the few remaining clan members with a temporary, insufficient sense of security. Regarding whether the enemy would decide to split up their forces in pursuit, Genma was pretty sure they would. In addition to the particular situation he had just thought about, it also related to the nature of the ongoing conflict. Ninja battles at this time were mostly fought between clans, with clans serving as the foundation of these conflicts. Ninjas often only trusted their own family members, viewing everyone else as an enemy or, at most, a hostile neutral. Every clan's existence in such a setting was in jeopardy, necessitating swift action, removing the grass to its roots, leaving no loose ends. Even the smallest breath of ordinary air could put out the Hanamiya clan, which was essentially a flickering candle on the edge of being extinguished. In this case, separating troops to pursue them carried no risk or hesitation. They were only a little ninja clan, they lacked Kekkei Genkai and hidden tactics that had been passed down through the generations. All they had ever done was make ends meet between more powerful groups. If they were particularly unique, it might have been their skill in releasing fire. However, the Hanamiya clan could be very good at fire release, but so were the Sarutobi and Uchiha clans. Could they even be compared? Fire release was a jutsu with a huge gap between its potential and its limitations. In terms of total strength, the Tsugawa clan, a mid-sized ninja clan that could organize more than 100 ninja, completely destroyed the Hanamiya clan. In fact, the Tsugawa clan was the one that destroyed the Hanamiya clan's hamlet. If one were to wonder if there was a long-standing animosity between the two, the Tsugawa clan had just swept them aside in order to increase their own domain. Big fish eat little fish. The Tsugawa clan chose to target weaker prey since they couldn't imagine intruding on a major ninja clan's domain. After separating themselves from their clan's hiding place, Genma Hanamiya started to jump through the treetops with a seemingly purposeful flair, as though he was worried the enemy would miss him. And the enemy's scouting ninja quickly saw them, just as he had intended. The ninja of the Tsugawa clan showed up in the northwest section of the forest just in time. "Captain, 3 enemies detected, they're fleeing in different directions. one of them appears to be that young clan leader who narrowly escaped before. Aside from these three, I haven't spotted any other remnants. These three are exposing themselves deliberately, likely to draw us away and buy time for the others to escape. The group's reconnaissance ninja swiftly put together the fundamental details Genma had purposefully divulged, and he immediately informed the combat commander who was following. As he listened to the report, the captain, a tall and burly ninja in his 30s, muttered, "Decoy tactics, same old petty tricks," without slowing down. "Yes, Captain, they've pulled this little stunt once before," the scout said with a nod. "If things go as expected, most of their remnants are hiding somewhere in this forest. They don't have the ability to relocate quickly. These three acting as decoys are likely their last shred of resistance. In the extreme case, they might be the only three ninja they have left who can still move. Take them out, and though this forest is vast, it'll inevitably become the graveyard for their entire clan. The Hanamiya clan would undoubtedly be wiped out whether or not decoys were used. It was only a matter of dying closer or distance, sooner or later." The captain's judgment was sound, and the so-called decoy tactics were nothing more than a last-ditch effort. I remember that young clan leader, a pathetic little figure with a bit of cunning but not the strength to back it up. "Here's my order: split into 3 teams, 5 per team, and pursue. I'll handle the little clan leader myself. Recon stays with the foreign team." "Yes, Captain." Without hesitation, the Tsugawa ninja divided into 3 groups, prepared to focus on destroying the enemy's remaining fighting capabilities. The enemy separated their forces as Genma had foreseen, and even better, the strongest among them, the enemy captain, commanded a team that charged directly at him. It was a sensible decision because Genma was now the leader of the Hanamiya clan and the group's emblem. His passing would be the clan's final demise, and they couldn't allow him to escape. Of course, the enemy captain would take him on personally. Of the 15 enemy ninja, the captain was a well-rounded jonin, and 2 exceptional jonin led the other 2 teams. The remaining ninja were 8 chunin and 4 grunts. Their strength was indisputable, and they were more than capable of eliminating the Hanamiya clan. "Captain, he's up ahead." As the enemy ninja got closer, one of them yelled. Genma periodically slowed his speed as the enemies chased him mercilessly, but there was no guarantee he wouldn't be apprehended. "Surround him," the commander said. The 5 adversaries spread out, enclosing Genma from all sides. Before long, he was within range of their attacks. A kunai sped toward Genma's midsection as a piercing whistle sliced through the air. He was only able to pause momentarily, bending his head and body to avoid the blow. The evasion caused Genma to lose his balance, and when the enemy's attack failed, he fell into the underbrush below. But then an odd thing occurred: Genma disappeared as soon as he fell. "What's happening? Is he gone? A duplicate? No, it's not possible. Everyone, get to higher ground, don't move carelessly from now on, stay alert, observe closely, and don't second-guess yourselves. The rat's hiding down there somewhere. He's not getting away," said the captain, calmly, despite the fact that Genma's disappearance caused some confusion among the enemy ninja. Genma had no possibility of escaping under normal conditions, provided they didn't panic, but one of White Zetsu's most distinctive skills was the mayfly technique, which enabled the user to merge their body with the ground and vegetation, eliminating any evidence of their existence. By using the natural system of underground water flows and plant roots, they were able to travel quickly to almost any location, a divine assassination technique. Ironically, White Zetsu frequently employed this method only for reconnaissance. What's even more ridiculous is that it activated quickly without the need for hand seals. Whether skilled or not, Genma has successfully used this power in battle at this point. As an elite ninja who had survived scores of battles, the enemy captain remained patiently on a large tree branch, watching the ground below. He wouldn't be deceived by looks, and no matter how well the enemy hid, he knew that waiting and remaining still would quickly reveal their weaknesses. The captain was significantly superior to Genma in terms of combat skill, experience, and battlefield judgment. To him, Genma was merely a youngster pretending to be a ninja. He was unaware, however, that overpowering strength meant nothing if it could not be used, that precise battlefield judgment may fail, and that conventional experience only worked against conventional adversaries. There was no opportunity for trial and error in war. Behind the captain, Genma's form appeared stealthily. His presence was distinct but completely devoid of any extra aura, and the enemy's keen senses picked up not the smallest indication that anything was wrong. Time appeared to stop at that precise instant. Genma's heart seemed to cease pumping, and at the moment before it began to pump blood once again, he made a permanent distinction between life and death. His right hand held a kunai, which he stabbed without hesitation into the captain's lower back, driving the blade all the way into flesh. At the same time, his left hand held a short sword, which he plunged into the back of the captain's neck. The thin, razor-sharp blade cut the spinal joints without any resistance, slicing down through the throat with the ease of piercing paper. Despite the unmatched assassination capability of the mayfly technique, Genma's inexperience meant that he could only ensure victory in this battle on his first try. As a result, he had picked the most formidable foe, and he was successful. The assassination was perfect. The opponent made no noise and put up no fight, but as soon as Genma finished the kill, a nearby ninja who was hyper-focused and looking the ground jerked his head around. The enemy is attacking, he yelled. A torrent of shuriken and kunai descended randomly as his words echoed. Genma hid beneath the captain's body right away. His murder had been flawless, so why had he been discovered so soon? Then it dawned on him, it was the breathing. The captain's breaths had become ragged after the stab, and it was plain to see that irregularity in the silence. After all, these ninja were battle-hardened. Even if a second assassination could be difficult, Genma remained unfazed because he had already accomplished his main objective, which was to eliminate the greatest opponent, and he had won half the fight. The surviving adversaries were logical and merciless. As soon as they realized the captain could not be saved, they launched an immediate attack. Kunai and shuriken continued to pound into flesh with unrelenting thuds. Genma may have overestimated them, as their attack was more of a stress reaction or a mechanical reflex. They were shocked by the abrupt death of their top officer, and they were even more perplexed by how Genma had backed the captain and why the captain had not responded. Water bullet technique, water release. An adversary created hand seals and threw a huge water ball in his direction. When Genma saw this, he released the kunai that was stuck in the captain's kidney. Chakra jumped up and quickly dodged to the left, hooking the short sword's hilt with his raised right arm while it was still in the captain's neck. The force completely severed the captain's neck by slightly spinning the hilt. It was a healthy habit to finish the job because it guaranteed that the opponent was actually dead. Genma spun in flight and landed softly. After grudgingly separating from its body, the captain's head swayed slowly and fell at Genma's feet like a heavy ball. Thud! It made a gentle, muted sound when it struck the ground, which was covered in dried twigs and decomposing leaves. The adversaries immediately stopped their assault. Genma's expression gave the impression that he was a demented madman, and his lips curled into a smile as his tongue pressed firmly against his dry, cracked bottom lip. He had been raised in a tranquil environment in his previous life, had never fought anyone after finishing elementary school, and had always lived by the values of love, gentleness, and honesty, never displaying such a violent side. People were products of their surroundings, and various situations showed different aspects of a person. Therefore, just because something hadn't surfaced didn't imply it wasn't there. Taijutsu may be forceful or flowing, the purest form of killing, genjutsu could be subtle, creepy, and lethal, and ninjutsu could be dazzlingly colorful. However, beneath these facades, every power system in every fight eventually revealed its most ruthless truth. Blood and iron. War was blood and iron in the ninja world and everywhere else. There was an inexplicable sense of mockery in everything that had just happened, and the head that rolled onto the ground had an expression of agony mixed with a flash of confusion. A ninja who was completely confident in their own strength would eventually experience such a drastic reversal, and his death was just one of the inevitable costs to be paid. For the opponent, this could only be compared to capsizing in the gutter, a humiliating upset. A hail of shuriken rushed toward Hanamiya Ginma as shock gave way to rage. Hanamiya Ginma was fully prepared for such an attack. He didn't hesitate when his feet hit the earth, chakra burst beneath him, and he ran behind a tall tree to hide his form like a gust of wind. Thud, 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 the shuriken rain pierced the ground, following Hanamiya Ginma's trajectory until becoming embedded in the tree's outer bark. One enemy ninja chose not to participate in the shuriken attack, instead observing Hanamiya Ginma's movements and posture while his hands quickly formed seals. With a simple 2 or 3-step sidestep, he pulled the evading Ginma back into his line of fire. Water bullet technique, water style. Hanamiya Ginma was hit by a huge ball of water. Hanamiya Ginma, who had been in the ninja world for a year, was unmoved by the wide range of ninjutsu. He was undoubtedly equipped with the essential traits of a ninja, albeit perhaps not battle-hardened. He instinctively brought his hands together, his fingers moving fluidly into seals to confront the assault. Great Flame Bullet is the fire style. The water orb that had already closed half the distance was directly targeted by a flaming orange-red fireball that was more than 2 meters in diameter. Nearly every family of clans skilled in fire techniques had a basic ninjutsu comparable to this one, with similar hand signs, chakra flows, and effects. The titles were so similar that they were hardly different: Grand Fireball, Great Fireball, Bursting Flame Ball, Flame Bullet, Great Flame Bullet, and so on. The ninja's vision was severely obscured as thick white steam, churned up by the intense heat, surged and spread through the dense forest. Fire and water clashed, and the flames went out as the water boiled and hissed. The two techniques' scale and power cancelled each other out amid the dense sizzling sound. The absence of the enemy's sensory ninja further favored Hanamiya Ginma because the mist obscured their numerical advantage and they were skilled at striking from the shadows. When he flattened himself against a tree trunk behind him, the mayfly technique kicked in again, and his body slowly blended with the wood like a pro swimmer disappearing beneath the water's surface. Hanamiya Ginma went quickly through the trees and ground, using his memories from a few moments previously. He soon found the ninja who had challenged him with water discharge. The enemy was slowly retreating with his back against a tree when he silently appeared behind him. This was a wise move because, in a situation where visibility was severely limited, leaning against cover could effectively protect against a sneak attack from behind. However, it backfired spectacularly this time. Like a ghost, Hanamiya Ginma's upper body jutted out from the trunk above. His left arm swung around to the front, while his right arm locked around the enemy's neck in a chokehold. With the unrelenting accuracy of pounding machi, he struck the man's chest cavity 20 or 30 times in quick succession, each blow fierce and unrelenting. The crisp sound of flesh giving way and the mechanical repetition conveyed a sense of deadly intent and icy indifference. In an instant, this man's survival was assured, yet his inside organs were so badly damaged that they could have been thrown directly into a boiling pot. The form of Hanamiya Genma disappeared again. In the past, whenever he performed ninjutsu, the release of chakra came with a strong sense of detachment, as if a bit of his spirit and vitality had been violently taken away. He felt the changes in his body more intensely when he entered fight. Following a procedure, he would feel weak and shriveled. This time, however, was different. He felt stronger during the fight, and every cell in his body seemed to awaken with it, becoming more colorful and alive. Whereas previously he had been a flat plane, he could now feel himself in vivid 3D, no, maybe even 6D. Hanamiya Genma had a sudden epiphany. Chakra might be a power that drastically saps one's life energy, and maybe regular people weren't meant to be ninjas at all. Who has been assaulted? Share your rank and status, an adversary yelled loudly. It was not a smart idea to make noise amid the dense steam, so Hanamiya Genma, who was already searching for his next victim, focused on the voice's origin and charged in its direction. He mentally counted to himself, 3 left. However, a small sizzling sound caught his attention as he was getting ready to kill the next attacker. It is a trap, not good. A vicious grin appeared on this ninja's face, hidden from Hanamiya Genma, as his hands finished the last seal. Hanamiya Genma responded immediately and fled utilizing the mayfly technique since he suspected the type of assault his opponent was going to launch. Hanamiya Genma was lured in by this enemy's self-made bait, which was a stack of pre-ignited explosive tags strapped to his body. A few moments later, 7 or 8 layered sheets of paper released their power. Under the massive radial shockwave, the ninja's body, strewn leaves, and surrounding dirt all dissolved simultaneously as a blinding white light burst. Many trees broke off from their trunks, moaning and cracking as they fell, and Hanamiya Genma's body was thrown violently from a piece of wood. His proficiency with this method was still lacking. The force of the explosion still showed his location even though he had escaped the epicenter of the bomb at high speed and was spared the worst of the damage. The battlefield was once again clear after the strong shockwave even scattered the surrounding vapor. This nonchalance, this complete disdain for one's own life, was incomprehensible. The enemy was unaware of how Hanamiya Genma carried out his killings. He had only observed the death of the second comrade, made an educated guess as to how quickly he would move by comparing his previous position with that of the fallen companion, and then used that tenuous information to set himself off. No, it was numbness, not nonchalance. He had gambled his life without hesitation, based on such limited knowledge. How was that any different from suicide? His explosion may have hit nothing but air. Naturally, Hanamiya Genma gave him some credit. His moves were predictable due to his own inexperience, almost exactly matching the enemy's prediction. Luckily, his alertness kept him safe from serious injury. Stated differently, the enemy's death had been pointless. Death felt more like a relief, and life seemed to have no purpose. After being compelled to emerge from his hiding place in a very unkempt state, Hanamiya Genma was once more in the line of sight of the enemy. When dealing with the technique of the mayfly, the best counter was definitely an area of effect ninjutsu. No matter how well you hid or how quickly you moved, the most effective strategy was a single overwhelming strike that flattened you into the ground. In actuality, the enemy's self-detonation attack wasn't a bad choice by any means, the only problem was that the timing of the explosion wasn't quite precise. Blood splattered instantly as a kunai penetrated through the mist and embedded itself in Hanamiya Genma's shoulder with a hollow thud. Luckily, the intense pain in his shoulder snapped his confused mind, which had been jumbled by the shock of the explosion, back to reality. Hanamiya Genma's blind spot flashed with a flash of cold steel as a man sprang out of the fading fog. Earth style. He yelled a warning to his remaining allies as the enemy began his assault. From what he understood, Hanamiya Genma used a special earth release method for assassination, movement, and concealment. Evidently, this impulsive decision gave his teammates inaccurate information. Though the razor-sharp blade still left a gash across his upper arm, Hanamiya Genma narrowly avoided the enemy's decapitating slash by using his left foot to propel forward and steady his nearly toppling body. His back and waist muscles tensed as he twisted his upper body to the side and leaned backward. Hanamiya Genma was forced to twist his body once more in the direction of the attack in order to avoid taking another blow when the attacker quickly reversed his grasp on the blade by flicking his wrist and then yanking his arm back. His senses were sharpened by the chilly blade's shine, and his concentration was further heightened by the cold against his skin. His breathing became steady and measured. However, he eventually lost his balance due to the constant back and forth of the enemy's attack. His upper body tipped back, and he had to thrust one arm to the ground to steady himself, narrowly missing a fall. The attacker took advantage of the situation and kicked him hard in the abdomen. Hanamiya Genma was sent backward, his body curving from the power of the blow. He had no time to tend to his wounds when his back collided with a projecting boulder, and he slid to the side without hesitation. The jolt went through him and briefly took his breath away. Clang! Hanamiya Genma had just landed when the enemy's short sword impacted the area, and the quick follow-up prevented him from launching a counterattack. He constantly rolled forward, evading the attack and changing positions until he eventually reclaimed a position appropriate for direct fight. Each blow was ruthlessly directed at the midline of Hanamiya Genma's torso, and the opposing ninja's assaults were lightning fast and deadly precise. This ninja was clearly proficient in taijutsu, or hand-to-hand fighting. His quick, forceful blows were intended to split Hanamiya Genma's left and right hands, preventing him from using hand seals to cast techniques. Hanamiya Genma wasn't exactly famous for his ninjutsu, so what precisely had allowed him to hold his own on the battlefield and survive this long? It was a good plan, but it overestimated its target. Since the adversary was only a chunin and could not completely stop another ninja from using techniques, the enemy's rhythm faltered a little, and Hanamiya Genma saw his opportunity. He sidestepped an incoming strike and retrieved a kunai with his right hand hanging by his side and slipping into his ninja pouch. As the enemy changed from a slash to a thrust and charged forward with another swing, Hanamiya Genma jerked his kunai upward. Clang! He snagged the enemy's blade with the kunai's tail ring with a piercing metallic crash, then twisted his wrist sharply to lock the short blade in place and drag it in the direction of the enemy's movement. Using his arm power, Hanamiya Genma pulled the enemy's body closer after the weapon slid from his hold. Then, planting his right foot, he slammed his knee upward with full force into the enemy's abdomen. Blood trickled from the enemy's mouth as his knees gave way uncontrollably, causing him to stumble back 2 steps after the knee hit, which was strong enough to induce internal bleeding, landed solidly. As he instinctively glanced up at Hanamiya Genma, agony twisted the enemy's face into a grimace and saw that his opponent's hands were already clasped together, the last seal finished in a split second. Will-o'-the-wisp technique for fire release. Although it was fire, The method was similar to someone taking a bowl of water and splattering it outward in a broad arc as orange-red flames burst in irregular clusters, racing forward while leaving distinct fiery tails. The ninja who specialized in taijutsu had nowhere to go to. In fact, he hardly responded before being surrounded by the fan-shaped spread of will-o'-the-wisps. Once the burning flames adhered to his body, they burnt with an intensity that was impossible to put out. In just 20 seconds, the enemy's cries stopped, and although his limbs twitched slightly in a pointless struggle, he was soon reduced to a charred husk, completely consumed by the flames. A blood-curdling scream ripped through the air, and the will-o'-the-wisps flared even more fiercely upon coming into contact with human flesh. Hanamiya Genma didn't even look at the now harmless enemy. Instead, he turned to face the last enemy in the area. This last adversary obviously intended to charge in and help his colleague, but he was stopped in his tracks by his allies' cries and horrific fate. He saw in Hanamiya Genma's eyes a cold, almost predatory calm that was devoid of rage or hatred, joy or grief, and the kind of detached stare one would give a friend or foe instead. This ninja, a simple genin, could no longer withstand the oppressive psychological pressure as he watched his friends fall one by one in a matter of seconds, leaving himself the only target. He turned and ran. But a kunai penetrated his heart from behind before he could go too far, and a faint shunk sounded. Even if this ninja was younger than Hanamiya Genma, in this world, you will die if you don't kill. What was the secret method that killed the captain? The ninja who was dying was able to croak out. Obviously, the death of their captain had signaled the start of their downfall. They would not have found themselves in this precarious position if the captain's passing had not been so unimportant to the conflict. A secret method? No, I only used ordinary ninjutsu, nothing remarkable, Hanamiya Genma said after pausing to think for a bit. Hanamiya Genma's wet hair stuck to his forehead, his clothes were almost completely soaked through, and the steam created by the clash of water and fire release techniques gradually subsided. The fight had been brief and, at best, moderately intense, but it had left his nerves as taut as a bowstring. Nevertheless, the mission's goal was mostly accomplished. Hanamiya Genma inhaled deeply, allowing the cool, moist air to cool his swollen lungs. He then had to go help his surviving allies. Hanamiya Genma's successful ambush of the enemy captain effectively sealed the battle's conclusion, and all that was left was garbage time, just like the last opponent harbored his last regret before dying. Hanamiya Genma's assassination was almost certain to succeed as long as he avoided stupid mistakes and the enemy failed to detect White Zetsu's powers. This was not because he was overconfident or arrogant about his abilities, but rather because he had a strong sense of self-awareness. By making the most of White Zetsu's abilities and striking when the enemy least expected it, the odds of assassinating their strongest fighter were naturally high. Although many people like watching dazzling ninjutsu in action, a ninja's primary goal is silent, covert assassination. The mayfly technique is the most effective in this field. Hanamiya Genma achieved his goal by killing 5 enemies as planned, but the process was difficult. He had to engage in direct combat and even got hurt. Ideally, he would have killed all 5 in a quiet series of killings, but he was unable to do so. Thinking back on his journey since transmigrating, Hanamiya Genma felt that although ninja battles were more brutal in this era, their average skill level probably paled in comparison to the later ninja village era, apart from a few extremely strong outliers. Whether it was the coordination and lethality of ninja squads or the smooth blending of ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu, this age trailed behind the ninja village era. But after giving it some more thinking, this made sense. Hanamiya Genma believed that, the future outstrips the present, and as the ages passed, everything changed without stopping, including ninjutsu systems, organizational structures, education, and combat. In the end, even though the execution was flawed, the result was acceptable, satisfying, even, because he had just recently become the White Zetsu hero, with the origins of his bodily changes still unknown and his new abilities unpolished, and he had rushed into battle. To perform this well was already impressive. Hanamiya Genma quickly refocused his mind because it was getting too far away. Hanamiya Genma had no time to clean up the battlefield or take stock after this battle ended, so he charged toward another one at full speed. Despite having already survived one skirmish, his chakra reserves were still strong because the previous battle hadn't required much ninjutsu, so he had plenty of energy for what was ahead. Hanamiya Genma used the mayfly technique to move quickly and reduce the length of his voyage in order to assure the lives of his two clansmen acting as bait. He had already planned his next battle, which would involve more assassinations, and he was dedicated to efficiency, so he would see it through to the conclusion. Although their encounter had been brief when he had killed the enemy captain earlier, he had taken advantage of the moment to steal a sample of the captain's chakra. Although insufficient for extended combat, it was enough for the false transformation technique, which allowed him to impersonate the captain with remarkable accuracy that was nearly impossible to refute. No ninja in the world could match White Zetsu's ability to transform, it was a divine mastery. With a target's chakra sample and no mistakes in personality, habits, demeanor, or conduct, the deception was nearly impenetrable. Hanamiya Genma only needed to imitate the captain on the battlefield. She didn't have to maintain the ruse over time or handle complex situations, so there was little chance of being exposed. On another battlefield, Kanzawa followed Hanamiya Genma's instructions to run and not fight, which greatly delayed the enemy. As Hanamiya Genma approached, he chose to stand atop a tall tree and watch the fighting below. Kanzawa was surrounded by 5 enemy ninjas, but he skillfully dodged them by dodging to the left and right and using fire-release ninjutsu to create barriers, creating confusion and hiding places throughout the field. Hanamiya Genma wondered, another cat-and-mouse game? When Kanzawa unleashed another fire release, its roar concealing his approach, Hanamiya Genma appeared behind the enemy, slitting his throat and stabbing his back in a single fluid strike. He used the mayfly technique to close in on the farthest enemy ninja while posing as the captain. He silently eased the still warm, lifeless body to the ground. Experience had refined Hanamiya Genma's tactics, and this time the enemy was too focused on pursuing Kanzawa to notice their fallen colleague. Fortune was on his side once more, as the opponent's scout ninja wasn't one of these 5 but rather possessed a third unit. Hanamiya Genma decided to be cautious after the other 4 stood too close together. He would identify himself as the captain, and as he approached, he made a purposeful noise, and sure enough, they saw him right away. "It's the captain, are you finished over there, captain?" The ninjas relaxed their attention when they saw him, and Hanamiya Genma gave a rigid nod. An expressionless face was preferable to one that was out of place. That side settled, he replied, "I came to reinforce you as quickly as I could, the others are following." "What's going on here?" The squad leader quickly clarified, "It's tricky, not wanting to upset the target. The target just keeps running away, burning chakra but refusing to engage. It slowed us down, but we're about to trap him," he said. Clearly annoyed by the indolence, the captain furrowed his forehead and said, "Enough circling, follow me." The 4 ninjas scurried after him as he charged toward the enemy, quickly closing the distance to Kanzawa, but as they prepared to attack, the captain halted. They would soon discover their missing man because time was running out. He turned his head abruptly and pretended to be shocked, saying, "Clan leader, why have you come here?" As he spoke, his blade flashed cold and swift, slicing through 3 throats before they could blink. Only the last, farthest from him and lagging behind, escaped the ambush. The 4 trusted him completely, turning as one to look where he stared, like starry-eyed admirers of a masterful act. The lone survivor's eyes widened in bewilderment. Is the captain a fraud? Why would he attack us? Hanamiya Genma proclaimed, 2 against 1, now we surround you. He removed his disguise under the ninja's astounded stare, his chakra signature returning to its original form. Sneak attacks are a good way to kill, but if you keep using ambushes and deceit, it seems like you're sacrificing some of your martial honor. Thankfully, no one among ninjas is very concerned with martial honor, and a person's character does not determine whether they win or lose in combat. Hanamiya Genma's power already exceeded that of the only enemy still alive at this point, and when you combine that with Hanamiya Zankawa's coordination, well, as he had stated, in a 2-on-1 scenario, the enemy's destiny was virtually certain. The enemy's body was now spread out in front of Hanamiya Genma, his face still contorted with disapproval. Hanamiya Zankawa was crouching next to the body, searching through the deceased's equipment to retrieve some ninja tools to replace what he had previously used up. 2/3 down, we've taken out more than half the enemy. Next, we should head to back up Ryanosuk. Wonder if they'll give us a shot at wiping them all out. Most likely, the response was, no. Yes, clan leader. Zankawa got to his feet, his face tense. He was a jumble of feelings inside of him, including nervousness from facing an unfathomable scenario, clarity from just avoiding death, and even a hint of confusion and powerlessness. He was unable to understand why Hanamiya Genma's strength had increased so quickly or how Genma had destroyed every enemy in sight. Was it simply an ambush and transformation trick? Could the transformation technique really be that practical, that high level, and so ridiculously convenient? It defied logic. Nevertheless, he trailed behind Hanamiya Genma despite his internal conflict. The 2 of them rushed off to reinforce the 3rd battlefield, one leading and the other following. Sadly, adversaries aren't pre-programmed machines that mindlessly obey commands. The battlefield is dynamic, and with reconnaissance at their disposal, they weren't going to overlook the changing dynamics of warfare. With long-range intelligence from their scout ninja, the last enemy squad had already assembled the sobering facts: their previous 2 teams had been totally destroyed. Therefore, the final 5 adversaries had already retreated in anticipation by the time Hanamiya Genma and his friend arrived at the vicinity of Hanamiya Ryanosuk. Although they were unaware of the precise circumstances, it was evident that their allies' chakra signatures had vanished quickly, 10 signals, all gone. The squad commander and worse, their greatest warrior, had been the first to be killed, meaning that they had encountered something unimaginable on the battlefield. The remainder of them had no choice but to resist. When you can't win, you run. It took instinct, not even intelligence, to make that decision. The only sensible course of action was to abandon the objective and withdraw. Hanamiya Ryanosuk was severely injured when Hanamiya Genma arrived at his side. He was bleeding rapidly and had multiple deep, penetrating wounds on his left leg. His condition required immediate attention. The likelihood is that Ryanosuk would have perished there if they hadn't arrived at that time. Ryanosuk had prepared himself for death and never expected the enemy to pull out on their own, yet his countenance still showed his incredulity. The fact that Zankawa and Hanamiya Ginma had arrived indicated that the clan head had actually carried out the plan to eliminate the enemy, but how? How could this have happened? Shall we pursue, clan leader? Jinsukawa said from atop a large tree, the enemy is almost out of my line of sight. Naturally, eliminating the opponent entirely would be ideal since it would stop intelligence leaks and further secure their position. Hanamiya Ginma and his crew might soon be the target of reprisals if these opponents managed to flee. Although they had eliminated 10 opponents, the enemy's total strength was still much higher than theirs. After carefully considering it, Hanamiya Ginma shook his head. Forget it, we're not in any shape to give chase. The opposition had an advantage since, line-of-sight tracking, couldn't keep up with a scout ninja's accurate evasive techniques, and everyone on their side was hurt, including one who was severely ill and in need of immediate medical attention. They might bring back more enemies, Zankawa warned, unable to contain his worry even though he knew Ginma had made the right choice. I know, we might face an even fiercer counterattack next time, but here's the thing, this was their best shot, and even then, they couldn't wipe us out. From here on, they'll have an even harder time pulling it off. We need to move again. If we can just seize a moment to catch our breath, there's nothing to fear. Both companions decided to trust Hanamiya Ginma after finding a glimmer of assurance in his statements. In actuality, they both understood their side lacked the ability to pursue, they were simply irritated and unable to let go after witnessing an opportunity to destroy the enemy pass them by. However, Hanamiya Ginma was truly no longer concerned about these adversaries, and he was beginning to feel that his development had surpassed theirs. In this case, time was on his side. The Hanamiya clan had endured such terrible losses, almost wiped out, because they had decided to hold on to their hamlet at the time, and it was almost sad. Their movements had become more nimble, and it was more difficult to identify their trails now that they were reduced to homeless vagrants navigating the ninja world. The enemy had lost their trail after repelling this attack, and it would be difficult for them to locate this small ninja clan again. As he attended to his companion's injuries, Hanamiya Ginma said, "Don't be too pessimistic," adding, "Even if we run into the Tsugawa clan again and are forced to fight, the outcome is still up in the air." Seeing those comments, Zankawa, who was now with Ginma, added, "True, no need to overthink it, who knows? Perhaps the Tsugawa clan will be eliminated by another ninja clan before we see them again. I'm saying we rely on ourselves. How'd you transform that into banking on luck?" Hanamiya Ginma gave him a sidelong glance and, choking back a response, asked, "Are we even talking about the same thing?" However, he couldn't deny Zankawa might be correct. Clan annihilation wasn't particularly uncommon during these times. A mid-sized ninja clan could be flourishing one day and disappearing the next. Hanamiya Ginma dressed his own shoulder wound after stopping Ryanosuke's bleeding, and the three of them had a short break before heading out to locate the remainder of their clan. To be honest, the remaining Hanamiya ninja were powerless to defend themselves at this point. Forget about opposing shinobi, they may be crippled even by tripping over a woodland beast. Fortunately, their bad luck hadn't gotten that bad. Hanamiya Ginma and the others quickly found their clansmen, safely hidden in the thick forest. Following a brief recap of what had transpired, the group departed once more, moving quickly and away from this location. The precise direction was irrelevant. After assembling all of their clansmen, the Hanamiya clan followed the stream farther into the primordial forest since they lacked the capacity to tolerate danger. Instead of relying on their own ninja strength to keep them safe, they trusted the divided geographical areas and natural environmental barriers to keep them safe and secure. To be honest, considering the circumstances, Hanamiya Genma could act more adaptably, freely, and securely by leaving the clan and navigating the ninja world by himself. However, he never considered doing so. These common clansmen had helped him too much during his year in the ninja world. He wouldn't have made it this far without their support. One's bottom line could be reduced, but it couldn't completely vanish, and humanity could become apathetic, but it couldn't become negative. Hanamiya Genma decided to genuinely become a member of his clan since everyone referred to him as their leader. Their troop had to travel extremely arduous, creating a way through the bush with their bare hands because there were no roads in the steep mountains and ancient trees. They crossed a mountain 5 days later, and 2 days later, they came to a halt in a valley in the untamed foothills. Even a mediocre reconnaissance ninja would have a hard time spotting them here because the valley was encircled by thick jungle and protected by mountains and trees. This was almost the center of the forest. With only a dozen or so people, the signs of human life wouldn't be visible even if they were around for a long time. Hanamiya Genma stood atop a huge tree root that protruded like coiled muscle, closely examining the surroundings. Then he patted the huge trunk next to him, which was as solid as a wall, and uttered, "This is the place." Naturally, this ancient woodland was unsuitable for permanent habitation. Fortunately, Hanamiya Genma and his people just required a short-term rest area rather than a long-term residence. Hanamiya's ninja had no complaints as they faced the limitless green that looked to be able to engulf everything and the constant sense of untamed desolation. Conversely, they could only find a little measure of safety in a location like this, where primates were practically non-existent. As they put aside the anxiety of their days-long flight, a feeling of relief started to blossom in their hearts. After deciding on a place, Hanamiya's ninja began constructing basic huts. Using the natural height disparities, they removed rotted branches and leaves from the lower regions and constructed roofs higher up after scouting the area for elevated tree roots, dried-out tree hollows, or partially fallen dead trees. It wasn't difficult. They made shelters that could withstand wind and rain by weaving vines into a lattice of branches and covering them with leaves. Soon, one temporary home after another appeared. Actually, they resembled shacks more than anything else. A light rain started to pour from the skies as they were finishing up their foothold, but there was no time to rest or seek cover. The others divided into 2 groups, one of which fished in a nearby stream and the other of which hunted animals and collected wild fruit in the surrounding region. Only by depending on the forest's plentiful natural resources had they managed to survive after their supplies had been cut off for a long time. Ninjas were able to live because of their adept hunting and fishing methods, not because they were stronger than their adversaries or had extraordinary endurance. They obtained the energy and nutrition they required to survive from huge animals, freshwater fish, and even wild fruits. They weren't yet concerned about the bitter cold because it was still a manageable temperature in the early autumn. Despite the difficult circumstances, Hanamiya Genma was granted certain rights as the clan leader. His clansmen set up his shelter on somewhat higher, drier terrain with a broad view, so he didn't have to participate in the hunting and fishing activities. He now sat under his rudimentary shelter, contemplating the way forward while observing the rain. Since there were so few of the Hanamiya clan left, it was hard for them to succeed in the ninja world. It was unclear where the clan would go from here. Even if he possessed 10 Kakashis, forget about their tiny troop of regular-born ninjas with infinitesimal numbers and limited skills. Okay, so 10 Kakashis could actually do something important. 10 expert ninja like that could usually cause a stir in the ninja community. In summary, joining a larger power was the most sensible course of action for a tiny force like theirs. However, depending on someone with whom they do not trust one another would just make them cannon fodder for other factions. Instead, it was preferable to make a living in the cracks since, at least that way, they would still be in control of their destiny. Regarding the future, Hanamiya Ginma wasn't unduly pessimistic. This wasn't because he had a strong will or understood what was ahead for the ninja world, rather, it was just because they had already reached their lowest point and that there would be a recovery wherever they went from here. Or, to put it another way, if the worst that can happen is dying in front of you, then what is there to be afraid of? Things are already this horrible, so what is there to fear about embarrassment or shame? After giving it some thought, he decided. By evening, the rain had ceased and the ninja had returned with a respectable load of food. They then started prepping the ingredients and cooking over a fire. As everyone began to eat, Hanamiya Ginma gathered the remaining 16 clansmen around the bonfire he had built on a comparatively dry area of land. Everyone's countenance contained a trace of tiredness from having just barely avoided death, yet their spirits remained unwavering since, in the end, being alive was preferable to being dead. The loss of the majority of their people and the near annihilation of their ninja clan left a secret sadness in everyone's heart. A freshly constructed, rustic wooden dish with a few fish pieces and a portion of fish soup was placed next to Hanamiya Ginma while he sat on a tree stump. As he raised the bowl, the steaming broth warmed his lips and teeth. Instead of tasting much fish oil, he detected a subtle pine aroma, which was the inherent flavor of the wooden bowl. Nobody said anything, and they all relished the brief silence. It was still important to bring everyone's ideas together in such a difficult setting, so Hanamiya Ginma put down his bowl, cleared his throat and started. Though we've escaped our enemy's pursuit, the survival challenges we face next remain severe. The battles between ninja clans have raged for a long time. In the foreseeable future, this chaos will continue. Weak as we are now, we could be wiped out in an instant. But today, I'm not here to dwell on the hardships of survival, nor do I intend to blame fate or wallow in despair. I just want to say that survival depends on method. If we choose the right one, we increase our chances of preserving ourselves. We seek to live, not just to scrape by. There has to be some spirit in a person. I don't mean the lofty kind where everyone's blind and I alone see clearly. I mean we're human, not rotting flesh with the ability to move. The Hanamiya clan in truth, with only a handful of us left, I believe the Hanamiya clan has effectively ceased to exist. To survive as long as possible, with autonomy and without becoming cannon fodder, we must recruit other living forces and seek to grow stronger. But it's a delicate balance. We need the ability to protect ourselves without becoming a thorn in the side of the great ninja clans. For us now, the clan itself no longer matters. The Hanamiya clan has neither a long history nor so-called family honor, nor any noteworthy bloodline our clan's name is worth defending. Of course, many of our people died for it. What I mean is, let what's meant to perish, perish. We abandon some things only to gain something new. I've decided that, starting today, we will no longer operate under the name of the Hanamiya clan. From now on, I'll call myself Hain Ginma, and you'll no longer be bound by clan ties in name. We'll just be a group of wandering ninja, brought together by chance and shared goals, struggling to survive. Hain Ginma then suddenly stood up. We don't seek victory, only survival. Don't fear death, but strive to endure. Don't vie for dominance, but flow with the tide. Don't act rashly, but move with the times. Hold hope in our hearts, hidden in the shadows. Amid the ashes, keep the flames burning. From this day forward, we call ourselves Ashes. As he said, Hain Ginma took off his forehead protector and threw it into the inferno in front of him. The Hanamiya clan's emblem became brighter and brighter in the raging flames until it gradually melted away. The events of tonight would undoubtedly merit a suitable title if they were lucky enough to be documented in the annals of the shinobi world. Similar to A Speech on the Dissolution of the Hanamiya Clan and the Founding of the Ashes Organization. Following that, the Hanamiya clan's final 16 shinobi collectively burned their forehead protectors, and the group vanished from the shinobi world. However, as said by Genma, in the huge universe of shinobi, who would give a damn if there were a minor ninja clan like this one? Even though Genma's commands meant removing their family name, the clan members complied. That's not to say they didn't oppose to this order or that they fully supported it, they just didn't express any strong feelings against it. Perhaps they were unable to express such views, but that was sufficient. Some shinobi even saw Genma's decision more positively, saying that the clan head was now only a captain and no longer a clan chief. Going from clan chief to captain sounded like a kind of demotion, but there might be more opportunities behind the title of captain. That was a topic for the future, though. Who knew? Maybe it was simply a nice dream, but was this really okay? The shinobi had strong bonds with their former hamlet, their slain clansmen, the Hanamiya name. Although no one could totally ignore their history, they had to put it all behind them for the time being and try to focus on the future. There was nothing else to do but look forward. At least the captain was guiding them in some direction, and whether that path was correct or not, it was still better than standing motionless and much better than drowning in the past. Although Genma prioritized survival, they continued to seek retribution against the Tsugawa shinobi who had annihilated the Hanamiya clan. However, there were requirements for getting revenge. They had to protect themselves and gradually increase their strength before they could wait an attack. In any event, the residual ambiguity that had dogged them disappeared once Genma outlined their next move and united everyone's resolve. They temporarily moved into this makeshift camp. He went back to the location where they had previously engaged the Tsugawa shinobi by himself the following day. As anticipated, all 3 battlefields had already been cleared by someone. The Tsugawa shinobi had undoubtedly returned. The safest course of action would have been to wipe up the evidence of the combat himself, but Genma had to lead his clansmen away first, leaving the enemy to handle the chore of removing battlefield intelligence. The only place Genma could find after his mushroom-swallowing incident was where he burned the white zetsu body to ashes with a single flare of flame, leaving nothing in its wake. He exhaled deeply after tying up the loose ends here. He didn't have the opportunity to closely examine the changes taking place inside his body till he got back to the camp. Why did Genma's body partially change into a state similar to white zetsu's, and why could he employ white zetsu's techniques? He had a suspicion that he had contracted a parasite of some kind, that white zetsu might not have been entirely dead but rather so near it that its life was almost gone, and that the mushroom's emergence might have been its last desperate attempt to resurrect itself. However, it was devoured alive during the regeneration process. The white zetsu then made an instinctive attempt to parasitize him, but it was too weak and was ultimately reverse assimilated. So why Genma's body could assimilate white zetsu was still a mystery. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to come up with a plausible answer. Could it be that his mind was essentially an alien entity occupying this body, a dove occupying a magpie's nest? The numbers still didn't make up. Why had Genma's body and chakra been improved after absorbing its powers, yet ordinary white zetsu were not renowned for their physical prowess? Since he was unable to fully understand its principles, or study it, Genma turned his attention to the applications. In addition to his proficiency with white zetsu's mayfly, spore, and substitution techniques, Genma had already observed more physical changes in him. His body experienced a sort of fibrosis, a somewhat plant-like transformation, when he partially white zetsufied it. His sensation of pain was greatly reduced by this alteration, which did not strengthen his physical defenses. Additionally, when he was hurt, keeping himself in this white zetsufied state sped up the healing process. For instance, after only 3 days, the cut on his shoulder no longer restricted his movement, and after 7 days, it had completely healed, leaving no visible scar. He was reminded of the quick development of bamboo shoots or the taste of leek juice by this plant-like energy and healing. Gunma was delighted by this healing skill, even though it was not as good as those strange shinobi who could rapidly recover from deadly wounds in combat. Beyond that, Gunma felt as though every cell in his body cheered as he stood in plenty of sunlight, and his energy and stamina increased. He wasn't sure if this was an illusion, but when he maintained his white zetsufied state, he suspected that after becoming a plant person, he had started to master photosynthesis because it appeared that he could directly absorb some of the energy from sun radiation. Then there was an additional important detail. When Gunma completely white zetsufied his body, he felt as if his mind could pick up a weak signal. He thought it might have come from Black Zetsu, the White Zetsu main body, or even the White Zetsu collective consciousness. Although he was unable to exploit this channel for long-distance two-way communication or translate the information into anything specific, it unquestionably transmitted a sensation of presence. This presence exuded a peaceful, happy warmth. Gunma was initially unable to identify it, but then it suddenly struck him like a flash of inspiration. In essence, "Only a mother is good in this world" was broadcast around the clock on the White Zetsu brain channel. The only thing that could motivate millions of White Zetsu to work for more than 1,000 years toward a meaningless, unattainable goal was constant brainwashing. When Gunma realized this, he instantly left his fully white zetsufied state and made the decision to keep his head from turning white zetsu unless it was absolutely required. Things would quickly cease to be enjoyable if he were unwittingly persuaded and joined the "split the moon to save mommy" scheme. Gunma started to let his mind wander after roughly determining the alterations in his physique, specifically in a way that was very beneficial to him. What would happen if he acquired additional white zetsu? After all, if a single white zetsu could energize his body, fortify him, and enable him to do 6 ninjutsu in a single breath without exerting himself, would that be enough? After all, there were innumerable methods of cooking. In addition to sashimi, there were stir-frying, deep-frying, braising, and steaming. Thus, was it feasible that white zetsu may end up serving as his own experience pack?